Welcome to another episode of Low Tech Garage. And today, I'm going to be telling you the top 5 things that I love about the Jaguar XJS, like the one behind me here. So if you're new to the channel and you found your way here because of the Jaguar content, you are in the right place. And definitely take a look at some of the older videos here. Because we love our Jaguars at Low Tech Garage, and there's plenty more content coming this way on them. Also, if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit that like button on the video here, and definitely hit that notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming content on these awesome cars. And now back to the top 5 things I love about the Jaguar XJS. And what better place to start than its timeless good looks? So hopefully you can see here our beautiful example that is going to be on its way to Canada next week. But look how amazing this car looks for coming on 30 years old. So the example I have in the shop is actually a 1996 Celebration Edition, which was actually made to commemorate the production life and kind of send off the platform of the XJS. It is the very last model year. And what does that mean when it's the very last model year? Well, let me point out a few little things that the Celebration and / Facelift Edition cars had. The most notable being this facelift front end, where we have the single headlights and the body-colored front bumpers, which really modernized the end of the production run on the XJS. But the XJS actually had a 21-year production life, which is an extremely long life for a vehicle. And ironically, I have another car in the shop that had almost exactly the same production life as well, and that's the Porsche 928 right there. And during its lifespan, it went through 3 major iterations of the car. There is the early generation, the pre-HE, then there is the HE, and then the facelift. All of these have slight differences that kind of can be identified, whether it's exterior or also some of the powertrain options. But nonetheless, the car generally looked about the same. And like I said, the one here is a facelift, so probably the most like modern with some of the body colored moldings, things like that during the generation. But honestly, other than the more chunky than usual airbag in the steering wheel, it is really hard to tell that this car is basically 30 years old. And that really goes to the timelessness that I'm talking about when you look at these cars. And honestly, the timelessness doesn't stop with the looks. Also, the power that these cars have had over their production time and even in modern day are actually quite good. So the pre-HE cars with their V12 were around 300 horsepower, give or take. Then the HE cars, they introduced the 6-cylinder and the V12. And then the later facelift like this, you have the V12 and the 6 as well. The 6 is about 240 horsepower, and then the 12 just over 300 again. And with the overdrive transmissions these have, you can happily, in modern day, be on the highway doing 80 miles an hour, cruising along with traffic, and it feels like a modern car that may have come out a year or two ago. And actually, this brings me to my next talking point. As much as I was just sharing the timeless looks and elegance of the car, it doesn't really stop there. It actually has quite modern performance. So that is really my number 2 on the top 5 here. When the car came out as a pre-HE edition, it came with the V12, and it made pretty close to 300 horsepower in that iteration. Then we had the HE, and that really was a later version of the V12, but again, it's keeping it around the 300 to 320 horsepower range. And they did introduce inline 6 during that generation 2 that was 3.6 liters, which still adequately powered more than 200 horsepower as well. And then the final facelift editions, which is like behind me here, you get basically 240 horsepower out of the inline 6, and again, like about 315 horsepower out of the V12. And all of this coupled with a modern overdrive transmission, or in some slightly rare cases, especially in the US, a 5-speed manual gearbox, means you actually have very modern driving characteristics. And what do I mean by that? I mean that I can happily get on the highway with this car and do 80 miles an hour, keeping up with traffic on the highway, The motor is not screaming. It's doing maybe 2,300 RPM. You're getting decent gas mileage, and you don't feel like the car is going to fall apart at those speeds. And it makes it feel like a car that's only a couple years old. And for something in this case that's nearly 30 years old and a platform that's nearly 50 years old, that really says something about the powertrain options and really how performance oriented this car was in its day and why it carries forward into the modern time as well. So, number 3, I want to talk about affordability. This car behind me, when it came out in 1996, was about $60,000 new. So not cheap. However, good examples like this one that have been well maintained, good service, nice paint and interior, everything working, you can get for around $10,000 to $12,000. When you combine this with the other top items I just shared with you, you realize this is incredible value for money. You have a modern classic car that you can drive anywhere with all these amenities, good power, and it is really affordable, especially when you compare it to some other classic cars from the 60s and things like that that can very quickly be north of $50,000, $60,000. And honestly, unless they've been modified, they can't really go on the highway because their really happy sweet spot is 55 to 60 miles an hour. And honestly, that's why I think these are great value for money. Parts availability for the most part is out there. The parts in general for the mechanical items are not that expensive. And like I said, for about 10 grand, you've got this beautiful classic car that you can take to shows. And it always gets comments when it's out there on the road because you don't see these things very often and they are just as timeless as I mentioned earlier. All right, and on to number 4. And this is community. What do I mean by community? I am talking about the community online and in person that continue to support these cars all these years on, keep them on the road, share their knowledge and their willingness to help out other owners with, little gremlins, things like that that they've encountered before in their life and their ownership. There is a wealth of knowledge online, and the Jag owners that keep these things going are awesome. And just as a great example of this, a common issue with these is that the convertible top pump fails. So what that really means is that the top is not building pressure and you cannot open or close the top without doing it manually. Now, the common fix for this is to put a whole new pump assembly in, which they're not easy to get and they're expensive in the $400 or $500 range. And honestly, things like that will scare potential future owners away because, if you're into this car for $500 just to replace this pump, before any other potential surprises, anything like that, that can seem daunting when it's, just starting out with a new classic car. However, the Jag community is awesome, and they have found that there's just one tiny little seal in this pump that fails and stops it from building pressure. And there's a handful of guys that sell the seal for about 10, $15 online. There's write-ups and videos on how to rebuild the pump yourself, and with a few little tools, you can put it all back together and have a top working as good as it was when it left the factory. And really, this is something that you wouldn't be able to do without the awesome Jaguar community and the support from fellow owners and members. And honestly, there's just countless examples like that when looking for support with the XJS community. And so I really recommend to anyone that's a little nervous about an old Jag ownership. Yes, it has its quirks like any classic car. There's a reason my Mustang's been under a cover for the best part of 10 years. It's got plenty of quirks. But the community that supports the Jag, the XJS specifically in this case, they're awesome. They're really good people, and there's always someone willing to help you work through some of the little issues you may be encountering because most likely they've encountered it before, and they get as much pleasure about seeing these cars on the road as well as keeping their own on the road. And number 5, where we're going to end it today, is the amenities that this car has for being practically 30 years old. And when I mean amenities, it really goes beyond just the features that I'll show you here in a second, but also just the quality. They really don't make cars like this anymore. And this is really awesome and really almost a nice thing that this was a product of the 70s before really huge cost-cutting ventures got too wound into this platform. And a lot of it just carried forward, and it makes for a car that just feels really well built as well. So let me show you some of the amenities as well as some of the quality, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, because I think it's really amazing for something that's been around as a platform for 50 years. So with those amenities, we have multi-way power seats with lumbar adjustment. We have central locking doors. We have modern climate control with various temperatures that you can actually set the AC to. It's not just on or off, and I will say it works quite well. And we have cruise control. And I know I touched on this about the transmission being overdrive, but also here, some people may not realize, but most modern Jaguars pull out in second gear. And that is by design, and it is for the comfort of the occupants. And right here, you can see you can also lock out first gear completely, or you can put it in sport mode, and that holds the RPM a little longer, or holds the gear, so you can get the full use of the performance in the car. And we come right here. You can see we have not only power windows, but also a power top, along with a heated back window and fog lights. And at the time, of course, you couldn't get more modern than this, with a cell phone in the console. Power mirrors. And I might be missing a few things here or there, but you can't beat a lovely analog clock. So you may see there's quite a lot of buttons in there and quite a lot of features for basically 2+2 GT car. But again, it makes it an amazing modern classic that you can use all the time. And with that, let me show you some of the quality items that I was talking about that oftentimes I think get overlooked at these. You know, people focus on other things with Jags, and the quality, especially when you factor in the age, is really just amazing. So I'll start here with the bright work that sits on top of the bumpers. All of this is metal and chrome, and it weighs a half a ton, I swear. When we had the car painted, every one of these was removed and polished, and again, at 30 years old, it came up to almost new. I mean, you can see my awkward legs in the reflection. That's how good it is. And again, when we look at the convertible top, we actually have a canvas top, not vinyl. Again, this is more expensive of a feature, and it's a much more quality top. And this has stood the test of time, again, for nearly 30 years. And the bright work doesn't stop on the bumpers. We have these lovely pieces of chrome where you never would see them inside the door, on the latch mechanism, again on this corner piece of trim inside the door shut. These lovely stainless treads on the rocker. The chrome really goes on for days and days, and 90% of it is real metal and real chrome. And again, it is all near perfect condition after all this time, and it really just shows that there wasn't cost cutting at every possible corner on this car, and it really makes it that much more lovely place to be and that much more of a luxurious experience. And one of my personal favorites for Jags, and this may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's exactly what sells me on them, are these beautiful wood veneers. I mean, just look at the amount of wood this little GT car has. It is absolutely covered in it, and where there isn't wood, there's leather. And the wood carries on along with the chrome I was talking about all through the door. And again, there is not a single piece of this that is not leather. Well, I guess I lied a little bit. You get the point though. 10% of the door's got a little bit of carpet on it. And talking of leather, look at these awesome seats. Beautiful piping and stitch work. They are just absolutely amazing. It's something you really don't find unless you're spending 100 grand these days. And honestly, this never gets old to me. Look at this amazing gas cap. You just don't see stuff like this anymore. They just don't make things like this. And again, it's all metal, 30 years old, and looks practically new. And it's a little tricky to see in here with the steering wheel. This is all leather wrapped all the way down. And we have the wood here as well. And the wood actually continues back around the instrument cluster, although it's a little shaded in there, so hard to see. So you get all these amenities, all these features, this beautiful quality for under $15,000. And I just can't think of many things out there that can really compete with this as a whole experience for that price point. And honestly, this is just what makes the XJS such a special car for me. So with that, that wraps up my top 5 favorite things about the Jaguar XJS. I really hope that you found this informative and enjoyed the information I shared with you. Please, please, please comment below. Let me hear your thoughts about what your favorite things are about the XJS. I'd love to hear them as well. Obviously, this is just 5 things. I know there's a lot more out there and a lot more opinions out there. So I'd love to hear them. And again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. We love our Jaguars here. There's a new one about to join the shop here as soon as the XJS leaves this week. So I'll be doing the reveal on that very, very soon. And definitely hit that notification bell. And if you like this video, please hit the like button as well. It all helps me grow the channel. My goal is to continue to grow this and share my love and passion for these beautiful Jaguars, as well as my knowledge with you. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. There's more content coming very soon. So with that, we'll see you soon.